Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is part 4 of Doyen, Mirko X male listener. Enjoy. Kuruno, being the cruel leader he was interested and low-key excited to see this rabbit hero get ripped to pieces by her own ally, and so sat down in his chair, resting his chin in his hand as he prepared for the fight. The other members, having heard Mirko call out an order not to shoot, were somewhat on edge but also wanted to follow their leader's example, so gingerly sat down too, to watch the show unfold before them. Your basic husky instincts were in full swing now as you chased Mirko around the room. Your higher self was now hidden, unable to be reached with neither voice nor reason, and of all the things Mirko was yelling at you, all you heard were squeals and screams befitting of her bunny nature, and it only made you pursue her with more tenacity. "Doyen!" she shouted, dropping low and rolling onto her back as you jumped at her, her feet connecting with your underbelly and sending you skyward before she jumped back up and punched you firmly on the shoulder as you came back down, sending you barreling off to the right and into a table that was by the wall. "Are you going to listen to me yet, or do I have to beat you up like these bad guys?" You completely ignored her. From what she thought, she didn't know that Kuruno's quirk had made you unable to understand her speech anymore, and you threw yourself at her again, snapping your teeth and growling viciously. She punched you again, and then jumped to avoid being snapped at, then jumped up in the hopes of landing a solid kick to your back. But you had twisted as she jumped up, and as she came down you clamped your teeth around her ankle and bit down hard. With her free foot she smashed it into the side of your head, then grabbed your ears and yanked hard to get you to let go. You did so with a yowl of pain, and she somersaulted off you, panting and with blood pouring from the wound on her ankle that your teeth had made. You too were starting to feel a little worse for wear from all of her kicks and punches, and stood for a second panting and huffing. "Eat!" Kuruno commanded you, and you took a step towards her. "Give me more time!" she shouted as she wiped a bit of sweat off her brow. "I can break through!" The members of the Siberials looked at each other, then looked around. Who was she talking to? But Kuruno still had his eyes on the pair of fighters in front of him and didn't appear to be fazed by anything. "Doyen!" she shouted at you. "This isn't you! You know you can beat this!" she called, raising her fists up in preparation to box with you should you get within range. "I'm having fun, but I'm not leaving here without you!" You still had a glazed look over your eyes, and kept them fixed on her with that wild look of a hunter in them. "How many times do I need to hit you before you snap out of this?" she asked, but from your point of view all you could hear was her bunny sounds, and you stalked slowly closer. "Doyen!" she shouted, raising her fist to face height and getting ready to throw. As you stepped within strike range she lashed out, giving you 2 solid punches in the face, both connecting heavily. You staggered back and blinked a few times, light showing in your eyes for just a second before it glazed back over again. "I know you can hear me, Doyen! Fight!" she shouted again, raising her fists and readying for another round. You stepped forwards again, and again, once you had stepped within range, she gave you a good right hook and then another straight jab, adding in a small hop before smashing both feet into your chest and doing a backflip off you. This knocked you back, and you fell into the table behind you, shaking your head and panting as you stared at the ground for a second. "Doyen!" she shouted again, and this time you looked up at her and saw her. "What's going on?" you thought as you looked at her. Your eyes quickly glossing over her body, and you saw her ankle was bleeding. "Mirko," you said weakly. Kuruno jumped to his feet and growled at you. "Kneel!" he barked, and you felt your body being taken over again. It was a slower sensation this time, and you could feel all of your limbs tingling. Then you could hear a low howling in your brain, and it brought forth all the delights of being a husky. You imagined yourself running with your family pack in the snow, carefree. There was a snow bunny in front of you. You wanted to eat it. It wasn't running away though. Why wasn't it running? Suddenly the bunny punched you square between the eyes and your utopia world was fractured for a second. A rip in the reality continuum showing you where you really were, who you were, and what you were doing, and you stopped. "You can do this, Doyen!" Mirko said, and you looked at her. "Mirko," you said again. Again you heard Kuruno's voice, and again you felt yourself slipping, but this time you dug in your heels and focused on Mirko in front of you. "I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm not going to go," you repeated to yourself internally. "Deny. Deny!" You let a low growl rumble in your chest, and you grit your teeth and snarled heavily. Mirko stood firm before you. She could see you fighting Kuruno's quirk with everything you had, and she locked eyes with you, willing you to break it. "Come on, Doyen," she called. "Come back to me. This is where you want to be." You forced yourself to stay in the present and push through, battling Kuruno's hold over you until you had remained in your right mind. Mirko smirked when she saw you keep your head, and you turned and looked at Kuruno. "Kneel!" he shouted, standing up and pointing at you, but you just stood your ground and smirked back. "Never," you replied with a cheeky glint in your eye. You ready to take him down? You then asked Mirko, who had stepped up beside you. Oh yeah, she replied with a giant smirk, rolling her shoulders and cracking her knuckles before punching her fists together. I just warmed up. You chuckled and held out your fist for her to bump it. Yeah, thanks. I could feel that you used me like a damn punching bag. You served your purpose, she replied cheekily, bumping your fist back. I'll take these 5, you take those, you said, gesturing vaguely to 2 groups that the Siberials had unknowingly formed. Done, she said as she stepped forwards. True to form, you and her had all the gang members knocked out or otherwise contained in a very short space of time, and you looked over to each other once everyone was caught and gave each other a knowing smile. The rest of the team came in after that and detained the gang members, escorting them out to the waiting police vans while you and Mirko debriefed the officers. You still hadn't had a chance to talk to Mirko properly about what had happened, and it would have to wait for a little while longer yet, as she was then seen to by the paramedics that turned up on site. Looks like teeth marks, one of the paramedics said when he crouched down to evaluate her ankle wound. Yep, she said brightly. Friendly fire. That's a very Mirko thing to not be fazed by her wounds. I'll see you next week for the final instalment of Doyen. See you then.